Solid, German under-23 champion this year, but she hasn't broken 23 seconds, and that's a tough old lane draw for somebody who is, in many respects, an outsider. Shericka Jackson, the Jamaican 200 champion this year, working on her speed this year. She's better known as a 400-meter runner. She has run 49.83 a couple of years ago. It's her birthday tomorrow, Jackson. Will she give herself an early present? This will be the athlete who might stop her, Jenna Prandini, the US champion, third in Rabat on Friday, to Miller Weibo and Asher Smith of Great Britain. Nina Asher Smith. Jennifer Gallet of France goes in 5. Third in the French Championships, Jennifer Gallet. Anna-Kiel Basinska, semi-finalist of the World Championships 3 years back. Went out in the heats in this stadium last year, but 3 times the Polish champion. Good lane draw for her, lane 4. Beth Dobbin, well, she's in fabulous form as the 24-year-old rather, excuse me, UK champion at the beginning of this month in a new personal best. She missed the Commonwealth Games qualifying time for Scotland by 1/100th of a second, but boy oh boy has she come back with a vengeance. Her last 4 200s have been personal bests. Inside the Britain in 3 is Gulfen Huang, or Huang Gulfen. She goes in 2, only 20 years old, better at 400 metres. And then on the inside, Justine Palfreman, 6th in the 400 yesterday and 7th in the 4x400 metres relay for South Africa. This is her 3rd race of the weekend for Palfreman on the inside. Well, Shericka Jackson, there she is. Perhaps starts as marginal favourite on paper ahead of Jenna Prandini. She's in lane 7, the Jamaican. Suffered a slight blip in Lausanne last week. She was only 3rd in 22.8. But birthday tomorrow, what a good time to give herself a big result. That line up from the inside again. Palfreman of South Africa in 1, Huang of China in 2, Dobbin of Great Britain in 3, Kiel Basinska of Poland in 4, Gallet of France in 5, and Jenna Prandini, the US champion, in 6. Jackson in 7 in that yellow vest of Jamaica, Vesoli in 8 for Germany, but Prandini is blasted off and already has passed Jackson. Well, she's better known as a 400-meter runner, Shericka Jackson, for Jamaica in that yellow. Will she come back here at Prandini? The American being closed down. They're way ahead at the moment. It's going to be very tight. The Jamaican's coming. She's getting closer. She's going to get down. She takes it by a metre. Both of them 3 or 4 metres ahead of the 3rd placer. What a wonderful race. Prandini maybe expended too much energy in the first 50 or 60. She absolutely blasted out of the block. She ran it like a 100 metres around the bend. And I know, Tony, you'll have a view on what she might have done right or done wrong in that one. But Shericka Jackson was hunting her down, wasn't she? She's the bronze medalist from Rio over 400 metres, and she ran it like a 400-metre runner. Really patient there through the second half and through the last 50 especially.
I think the instruction had been there to get out hard, try and break the stagger on the outside, put the others under pressure. But like you say, if you expend too much energy, you're not putting your hips in the right place, not coming home particularly well. Let me talk to somebody who knows more about 200 metres than me. Catherine, what do you say?
It went completely to plan.
Can you remember that long ago, Kat?
I can indeed. I can remember running nearly that fast, but not quite. Your short sprinter, Jenna Prandini, got out like a rocket, and the strength and the speed endurance of Jackson with that 400-metre speed endurance just clawed her back. It was a wonderful race. The world number 2 against the world number 4. These are 2 of the fastest women in the world over this distance, and it was a wonderful race that we hoped. Look at the technique, holding her form. Jackson's not tired. She usually runs 400 metres, but that's a good turn of speed. Look at what she clawed back over the last 60 metres. And I can tell you as a sprinter, you're like, she's coming, she's coming. They will know Shericka Jackson's coming with her 400-metre strength. That was a brilliant race.
But if you watch Prandini coming off the turn, she doesn't get up. She sort of runs into the bend instead of using the centre.
The women's 200 metres at the 2018 Athletics World Cup in London produced a race that perfectly illustrated the difference between explosive speed and speed endurance. Jenna Prandini of the United States attacked the race with the aggression of a 100-metre specialist, building a clear advantage through the bend. Shericka Jackson, meanwhile, relied on a completely different weapon, the strength and efficiency developed through years of 400-metre racing. The result was one of the most dramatic comebacks of the competition. Jackson came from behind in the final stages to win in 22.35 seconds, with Prandini 2nd in 22.45 and Great Britain's Beth Dobbin 3rd in 22.95. The official results confirm the winning margin of exactly 1/10 of a second. What made the race so interesting was the contrast between the two leading athletes. Prandini entered with the kind of raw speed that can completely change a 200-meter race. Her strength was obvious from the opening steps. Attack the start, build maximum velocity quickly, carry that speed through the curve, and force the rest of the field to chase. Jackson represented almost the opposite philosophy. Although she was already an established 400-meter runner, she was increasingly proving that her endurance could become a weapon in the shorter sprint. Her 400-meter background meant she was comfortable running hard for longer without allowing her mechanics to collapse. In a 200-meter race, that ability becomes particularly dangerous over the final 60 meters. And that is exactly where this race was decided. From the gun, Prandini looked determined to make the race as difficult as possible for everyone behind her. She attacked the opening section aggressively and immediately began taking advantage of her speed. From the outside, Jackson could see Prandini's advantage developing, but she did not respond by desperately trying to match every early movement. That decision was critical. The 200 meters contains two completely different physical challenges. The first half demands acceleration and the ability to generate high speed through the curve. The second half demands the ability to maintain that speed after the body has already accumulated significant fatigue. Prandini was exceptional at the first part. Jackson was exceptional at the second. As the athletes approached the end of the bend, Prandini had established herself as the clear leader. Her aggressive strategy had worked. She had put pressure on Jackson and the rest of the field and appeared to have created enough separation to control the finish. But the visual advantage was slightly deceptive. Jackson was still moving efficiently. She wasn't making desperate movements. She wasn't tightening dramatically through the shoulders. She wasn't trying to close the entire gap in a single acceleration. Instead, she was gradually eating into Prandini's advantage. This is where Jackson's 400-meter background became so important. A 400-meter specialist spends an enormous amount of time learning how to maintain running mechanics while fatigue becomes increasingly severe. The athlete must continue producing force even when the legs begin to feel heavy and the stride naturally wants to shorten. Jackson had that ability. And as the race moved onto the home straight, Prandini's early investment began to become expensive. Her lead was still there, but the gap was shrinking. Jackson was coming. The most impressive aspect of her comeback was not simply the speed of the closing phase, it was the way she maintained her technique while accelerating. Her posture remained strong, her stride stayed coordinated, and her arms continued working in rhythm with her legs. That is exactly what you want to see from a high-level 200-meter runner during the final 50 meters. The athlete who is ahead has to keep producing speed. The athlete coming from behind only needs to produce more. Jackson began doing precisely that. With approximately 60 meters remaining, the race entered its decisive phase. Prandini was still fighting, but the momentum had changed completely. Jackson had transformed from the chaser into the athlete applying the pressure. Every stride reduced the deficit. Then came the final acceleration. Jackson's closing speed was devastating. Instead of fading as the finish approached, she appeared to become stronger relative to Prandini. Her 400-meter endurance was now functioning as a sprint weapon. Prandini had spent much of the race trying to create separation. Jackson had spent much of the race preserving the ability to close. Those two strategies collided in the final meters, and Jackson won the battle. She crossed the line first in 22.35, just ahead of Prandini's 22.45. Beth Dobbin completed the podium in 22.95, while Anna Kubasinska finished fifth in 23.25. The result is particularly interesting because Jackson did not need to dominate the first half of the race. Her victory was built almost entirely around what she could do after the race became difficult. That is one of the fundamental differences between a good 200-meter runner and a truly dangerous 200-meter runner. Anyone can look spectacular when the body is fresh. The real test comes when the athlete has already reached high velocity and begins experiencing fatigue. At that point, technique becomes everything. If the hips begin dropping, the stride becomes inefficient. If the shoulders tighten, energy is wasted. If the athlete begins overstriding, ground contact becomes longer and acceleration disappears. Jackson avoided that collapse better than Prandini in this race. Her 400-meter experience gave her an unusual level of control. She understood how to distribute effort. She understood that the race was not necessarily lost because Prandini was ahead coming off the bend. And most importantly, she trusted her ability to finish. That psychological element cannot be ignored. When a runner sees an opponent several meters ahead with only a few seconds remaining, the natural reaction is to panic. Jackson did the opposite. She remained patient long enough for her superior speed endurance to become decisive. Prandini's strategy was not necessarily wrong. In fact, there was a lot to like about it. Her explosive start put Jackson under immediate pressure and gave the American control of the race. The problem was that she had to maintain the consequences of that opening speed all the way to the finish. The 200 meters punishes athletes who confuse early speed with complete race speed. Prandini looked almost like she was running a 100-meter race for the first half. She attacked aggressively, reached high velocity, and created separation. But once the race moved beyond the bend, she needed to convert that speed into sustainable speed. Jackson was better at that conversion. The final 60 meters, therefore, became a technical and physiological comparison. Prandini was attempting to defend her advantage. Jackson was attempting to expand her momentum. Those are very different situations. When Jackson finally drew level, the race effectively became hers because she had more speed remaining. Once she moved past Prandini, there was no time left for the American to respond. That is why the 22.35 victory was more impressive than the raw time might initially suggest. The race demonstrated a specific type of athletic quality, the ability to preserve mechanical efficiency while operating under extreme fatigue. And Jackson's development would later prove just how important that quality was. At the 2018 World Cup, she was already showing the potential to become an elite 200-meter athlete. Her primary reputation was still connected to the 400 meters, but performances like this demonstrated that her quarter-mile background could actually become an advantage rather than a limitation. Over the following years, that potential became reality. Jackson eventually developed into one of the world's most dominant 200-meter sprinters. In 2022, she ran 21.45 seconds to win the World Championship title in Eugene, setting a championship record at the time. Later that season, she produced an extraordinary 21.41, making her the second fastest woman ever over 200 meters behind Florence Griffith Joyner's world record. World Athletics records the 21.41 performance among Jackson's defining career marks. Looking back, the London race becomes even more interesting. The athlete who would eventually run 21.41 was already displaying the fundamental characteristics required for that level of performance. The patience, the closing speed, the ability to maintain posture, the 400-meter strength, the confidence to allow an opponent to go ahead without abandoning the race plan. Those qualities were already visible, and this is what makes the 2018 World Cup race more than just an exciting comeback. It was a glimpse into the evolution of Jackson as a sprinter. She wasn't yet the 21-second superstar the world would later know, but the ingredients were there. The most important lesson from the race is that a 200-meter sprint cannot be judged by the first 100 meters alone. Prandini demonstrated extraordinary acceleration and put herself in an excellent position. Jackson demonstrated something different, the ability to preserve speed when the race became physically and technically demanding. The final 60 meters exposed the difference. Prandini had spent her energy creating the lead. Jackson had spent hers preparing to destroy it. And once Jackson began her final acceleration, the entire race changed in seconds. From the outside, it looked like Prandini was winning comfortably. Then Jackson started coming. She came through the final bend. She came down the straight, and with every stride, the gap disappeared. By the time they reached the finish line, the Americans' early advantage was gone. 22.35 to 22.45. 1/10 of a second separated them, but the most important number was not the margin. It was the final 60 meters. That was where Shericka Jackson showed the world exactly what made her different. She could combine the explosiveness required for the 200 meters with the endurance of a 400-meter specialist. And years later, when she became a 21.41-second world champion and the second fastest woman ever over 200 meters, this race looked less like a surprise and more like an early warning. Shericka Jackson was already coming. The world simply had not yet seen how fast she could become.